their projects and their roles. Hello everyone, I think I've started before I went live. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Jihan, and now I'm going to hand over to Alex to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a strategy analyst in the London office for Accenture. I have a degree in social science from a university in Canada, which is why my accent might be funny. I work in resources for a bunch of clients, which you can hear about more later throughout my experience.
Brilliant, thank you. And Kunal, could you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name's Kunal. I went to City University and studied business and computer science. I'm currently a technology analyst at Accenture and I'm working on a large products client.
Thank you, thanks Kunal. Right, so my first question is going to go to Alex, and I'm going to ask if you could give us an insight into why you joined us at Accenture. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, of course. So consulting was not necessarily something that I had planned to apply for, but Accenture was really keen and did a lot of recruiting events on my university campus. And then everyone I've ever met at any of these events was actually just incredibly friendly and basically demystified the myth of consulting to me, which is what we're trying to do tonight for you. And basically, I found everyone was really, really nice, and also the work was that they were talking about was really interesting. So all of a sudden, I thought this is a company I could work for. So I've decided to apply, and I found it a very rewarding experience and a great place to work.
Thank you. And how about yourself, Kunal? Why did you join us?
So my joining reasons were slightly different. So I initially did an internship at Accenture, and was approached by the graduate recruitment team once I was actually leaving, and offered me an opportunity to rejoin as a graduate, and at which point I felt that it was a perfect opportunity to sort of experience multiple technologies within one workplace, and that kind of gave me a perfect learning platform. So yeah, that was my reason.
Brilliant. It sounds like obviously it went really well on your internship if they asked you to come back. What were the first few weeks like when you came back as a graduate?
So my first few weeks when I came back as a graduate was actually full of training. So I had to do some Java training for 5 weeks, so that was a steep learning curve for myself, but nothing that I couldn't handle. It was really enjoyable, had a great starter group to sort of work with, and they made it really interactive as well, so yeah.
Fantastic. And Alex, what were your first few weeks like?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, my background is sort of not in business at all, so I have a degree in history, and I was really afraid to end up in anything sort of very numerical. Obviously, I ended up in financial services, so for my first project. So my first few weeks meant I was learning lots. There was a lot of reading on the train back and forth. There were a lot of online courses that I was getting involved in just to wrap my head around it. That being said, my manager never expected me to know anything beforehand, and they obviously knew what my background was, and that's completely fine. So they didn't choose me for a project based on what I already knew, but sort of on my ability and willingness to learn, which was really nice and really encouraging. And yeah, I basically was able to pick up most of the language and pick up the content, and yeah, then I was up to speed with the project, and I had tasks to do sort of ongoing as I was learning, and then after a couple of weeks I was actually training the rest of my team on a lot of the content, so it was really, really rewarding in the end.
Brilliant, that's really great to hear. And could you give our viewers a little insight into what your day-to-day role actually looks like?
Yeah, of course. My day-to-day role depends a lot on what stage of the project we're at, and also what manager I'm working for. So, for example, if we're kind of in the middle of a project and I kind of know what I have to do for the week, I can just come in and pick up where I left the day before and kind of keep going through my tasks. You usually have a bunch of iterations rounds with your manager, so you kind of make progress on a piece of work, and then you send it to your manager, you get feedback, and then you improve it, and then send it back until it's in its final stage. So that's one thing you could be doing. If you're wrapping up, then you basically have a lot of meetings with your clients, and you kind of tell them what you've found during the project, or you basically tell them that your whatever it is you're about to deliver went well. And then some other days are a bit crazy because you walk into the office at 8:30 and your senior manager or managing director wants a specific presentation to be made or a piece of research, and your plans for the day kind of go out the window, and that's what you do.
Brilliant. So you have to be a little bit flexible. Kunal, is it the same for you? What's your day-to-day role like?
So mine's a bit more different. Well, it always varies. Usually I usually just walk into the office and make sure that there's no issues, either from a client perspective or from a BAU perspective. And if there are, I usually resolve them or try to. But ultimately, it's never really the same. There's always something new to sort of dive into and get stuck in with, really.
Brilliant. And when you first join a project, what's it like? How does it make you feel? What's it like being on client side?
So for me, the best way I can describe this is when you've sort of left college and you've gone to university and you're sort of meeting new people, starting a new subject. It's something like that. But it was slightly daunting for me when I joined a new client. It was a completely new environment, different people to work with, different working style. But the team ultimately was really welcoming, and they helped me sort of get settled in. They introduced me to everyone, so all the issues were addressed straight.
Brilliant. And Alex, how about yourself? What was it like when you first joined your project?
So joining a project is actually quite exciting because it means that you've basically finished one, and then you can kind of forget a little bit about all the hard work on that one, and then you get the fun part again, which is called onboarding. So that's basically when your manager gives you all the materials that are relevant to it. You kind of go back to doing a little bit of research just to familiarize yourself with the topic and kind of with what you're doing, and you get to meet everyone. So if that's kind of, if you're a sociable person, I think you're actually going to have a lot of fun. And also the first part of the project is also the part where you're kind of planning out the activities. So basically that initial stage is really important to make sure that you're going to have enough time to do the work and that you have enough support. And this is also the part where you can kind of speak with your manager and say, okay, I think I can handle this part, and I might need some help over here. So that's a really good opportunity to actually carve out what your role is going to be in the project. And you do have a little bit of leeway there. It's not just going to be your manager telling you ABC. You can kind of negotiate it a little bit or say, I'm actually really interested in this part, and then that can be quite exciting because you get to do what you're interested in.
That's really interesting. Another question for you, Alex. So with regards to career development, as time's gone on, what kind of training and development have you received whilst you've been at Accenture?
So Accenture has basically an online university, which I don't think we advertise as much as we should, but basically when you're an Accenture analyst, you have access to hours and hours of training online, which is absolutely amazing. So one of my first projects was in commodity trading, and I had no idea what a trade even was, or what a commodity was for that matter. But basically you can access all these courses, and they're a little bit like podcasts or university lectures, but they're fully recorded. You can just kind of pop your headphones in on the train or even from your phone. Then you learn lots of content. So my managers kind of pulled me in the right direction in showing me, where to find all of this and kind of what the most important ones are. So that was a huge piece that I did when I first joined the project. Apart from that, we kind of have ongoing training as well. So you can train on anything from how to manage conflict or how to deal with stakeholders or how to use Excel really well. So all of these are available online. So that's the formal training, and I would say the biggest training that you're ever going to get is just on-the-job training. So you end up at client site and all of a sudden the internet doesn't work, or the PowerPoint changes that you made on the train just suddenly disappeared, and then you have to think really fast. So that happens more often than you might think, and a lot of consulting is just basically figuring out those issues on the spot. So that's the most important training I think I've received, and I'm always with my managers, and they're always very supportive, and then we always have sort of a little bit of a laugh and a celebration because we figure it out usually.
Thinking on your feet, definitely. You get there in the end, don't you? Kunal, what about yourself? Is it slightly different to Alex?
Yeah, so I received slightly more of a structured approach to training. So when I joined my project, I was actually given an onboarding pack of how to actually carry out discovery on migrations, decommissions. So that's more project specific. And then my project and my career counsellor actually supported me in actually going for a training course for both ITIL and Prince 2, which are service delivery and project management courses. So that allowed me to sort of develop my skills as a project manager and a service delivery component, especially as I'm sort of dealing with a project that is mainly around end user computing and project delivery.
Okay, brilliant. That's interesting. And following on from that, we've actually had a question come in on social media, which is what kind of support are you given in your role day to day when you've got questions, for example? Kunal, could you pick that one up?
Yeah, so whenever I've had a question, usually I can just approach my manager or senior manager, and they're usually, well, always supportive, and they'll direct their efforts where possible and where required. So there's never been any sort of issue with regards to that. I've always had that support with regards, well, depending on how big or small it is. So there's never been that issue around that.
Okay, brilliant. It sounds like you feel really supported. Alex, what kind of support are you given day to day when you've got sort of questions and queries?
One really important thing I would say is that people actually appreciate you asking questions, and they want you to ask questions. So I'd say initially when you're onboarding, they want you to ask as many questions as possible. So I remember I used to have sessions with my manager, and he would tell me, come with questions. And if I only came with like 5 or 10, he would say that's not enough. You really need to understand this. So questions are definitely encouraged. I think later on during your project, when you already know sort of the context and everything you need to be working on, if you have a question, then what you want to do is, first of all, if you're just making sure you're understood right, definitely validate with them. Just say, I just want to know that we're on the same page. I just want to double check this with you, because they will prefer you ask them rather than work on an assumption that turns out to be wrong. And then the only other thing I would say is if you kind of have a problem or you're stuck somewhere, rather than just immediately going to ask your manager, figure out what your best guess is, or just figure out a couple of options of how you could approach the situation and go to your manager saying, I'm not quite sure how to proceed, but this is kind of what I think, and I would really appreciate your input. So that way you'll show that you have been thinking about it, and rather you want their input rather than you want them giving you the answer. So that's a really good way to impress them.
That's really useful advice, actually. And another question is, what are the most challenging and perhaps least enjoyable aspects of your role, Alex?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of differences that come to mind when you think about challenges of work life. A really big one that I think happens to a lot of people when they transition from perhaps university life is that you're no longer the sole responsible person for all your work. So I think in uni a lot of the time, you submit a paper and you know everything that went into it, and you know that you really did a really good job, or you could have put in more effort sometimes. But in a project, you're all responsible for the final product. So that basically means that you might have made a mistake, or your colleague or your manager, but if something didn't go well, it's on all of you. So sometimes you have to take the blame even if it's not your fault, or sometimes you can't tell who it is, and sometimes someone else takes the blame for you. So it's a little bit of either you feel bad or you feel a little bit frustrated. So you have to learn to work with that. And then I would say another big one is just a really, really steep learning curve at times. So I personally really enjoy it, and I think many people find it to be refreshing, to switch what they're working on a fair bit. It really keeps you active and it keeps you sort of on top of trends in the market, which is really important. But at the same time, one day you'll be working on an energy project, and the next day you'll be working on a health or public service project. So you really have to learn the language really quickly and sort of adapt to your new context very, very quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. And Kunal, how about you? What do you kind of find challenging?
I think it's that moment where you have to draw a fine line of when to ask for help when there's a bit too much work. But that's been the least enjoyable aspect, is when you've had to go and ask for help when the work's actually been allocated to yourself.
Okay, that makes sense too. And Alex, how do you network at Accenture and meet like-minded people?
So I would say a really big struggle I have, I should have mentioned in the previous question actually, is that it's hard to pick what social event to go to rather than not having a full social calendar. So what happens is it's a little bit set up like a university, like we previously said. So you have a start group that's a little bit like your freshers group, and you kind of go for training with these people, and then you get split up in different projects. But basically, that's your, that's your family in a way. That's your support group. So whenever you have a silly question, you can always go back. And because you're all split up, it's quite nice to keep up with them and learn a lot about different parts of the business. And then you kind of have your project team. So those are people you see every day usually. And then all of a sudden you switch projects, so you don't see them anymore. So you end up actually keeping in touch with a lot of people from previous projects, and then you'll find that even the ones you didn't like and don't want to keep in touch with, you will oddly miss. Then we have sort of big client service groups. So say you're in products or you're in financial services, and those groups will have regular meetings over breakfast or over drinks or have Christmas parties where you kind of meet people at all levels of the business. So that would say that's like your big department in your university. Then all the analysts are actually split up in sub-communities. So that's just an analyst group basically, and then we do fun things like ice skating, and I think next week we're having a cocktail making night. So lots of fun things always happening. So that's a little bit like I guess your college in university. And then apart from that, you have tons of extracurriculars. So you can have anything from netball club to running club to hiking club to accent on women or accent on ethnicity. So there's always something to do. And then on top of all of this, you also have brown bag sessions. So that's learning at lunch. So you can meet people based on what interest you have, what area of the business you're working in, what area of the business you want to work in, your group, or like your level within the company, or just for fun.
So lots and lots going on. And Kunal, how about yourself? How have you been busy networking?
I usually just try and attend the regular comms event, which is held by the technology arm at Accenture. So I try to go to those and meet new faces. But other than that, I usually attend the faculty events and welcome new graduates that join the firm, and sort of discuss their expectations when they're joining the firm, and what kind of training courses they're going to be sort of going on to, and what training courses they do want to do, and try to sort of attend those events as best as possible.
Brilliant. And Kunal, you say you've been based on a project up north. What's that like? Because obviously we're not just based in London.
It's slightly different, but usually our project is like a family, so we'll usually always do some sort of fun activities outside, so usually football, or our regular sort of life at events, so usually just trying to get everyone together. It's been kind of difficult working away from home, but you do get used to it, and it is fun, and it sort of gives you a different focus on how to sort of approach different tasks. But yeah, overall it's been a great experience.
Oh, brilliant. And this is a question for both of you. If you knew what you know now, what one piece of advice would you give to one of our viewers who might be thinking about applying to a role at Accenture? And I'm going to start with you, Kunal.
I would say just join Accenture with an open mind. So, for example, I joined Accenture as a Java developer, and I thought, okay, I'll just be doing Java and I'll just be programming. But that wasn't the case. I initially, when I joined as an intern, I ended up doing some testing and performance testing, and then I left Accenture, came back, and then actually landed myself on a project for infrastructure. So I would just say join Accenture with an open mind, try and experience multiple technologies, and you can obviously apply that to different roles, especially if you're a developer, you can get a different understanding on how different areas sort of interlink with each other rather than just having tunnel vision.
Great advice. And Alex?
I think my advice would be to trust your ability. So I think a lot of people are afraid of consulting or think that there's a certain specific type of person that joins consulting and will be good at it. But what I would like to say is that I've met people from all walks of life in Accenture, all academic backgrounds, from music to climate physics, and we all find a place within the company, and we all find something that we're good at and that we actually genuinely want to do. So not all consultants are these super intense, high-pressure people who wake up at 5:30 for their run and then work for 12 hours and then go out and party. Definitely do not do that, and I would just like to encourage everyone to basically trust their ability and try out their luck. So if you are the kind of person who likes a little bit of a challenge and wants to learn about many areas of business rather than sort of focusing in on just one, and if you like high-level problem solving, then you'll probably right for the business. So you should definitely apply.
Lovely advice there. And so one last question, actually, just to round up. What kind of experience did you both have before you joined as Accenture? I know, Kunal, you were an intern. Were you involved in anything else?
So I was also a team leader at Sainsbury's. So that was just a completely different work environment. So that was more sort of delivery, but that was completely different, not technology based, retail, so lots of customer facing role. Well, that was a customer facing role, so I did get some experience there, and I was able to transfer that, but other than that, no.
Okay, brilliant. It's always different skills we learn in different roles, isn't it? And Alex, what kind of experience did you have before joining us?
So before joining, I was actually working for a startup in India. And it has what I'm doing now, but I think they basically appreciated the fact that I managed to be okay after being sort of dropped into a completely novel environment. And then before that, I used to work for the public service. So back in Canada, I used to be a public servant. Again, has nothing to do with kind of what I ended up doing. So it's more just about being comfortable talking to people and sort of being confident approaching people, and yeah, just generally having a positive attitude towards different work and different work environments.
Brilliant, and a lovely note to end on, being positive. So thank you to all our viewers for your time watching it, and thank you to you both for joining us on this Hangout. It's been really useful and really informative. If any of you watching would like to find out more about our programs, or if you'd be interested in applying, you can visit our graduate site at accenture.com/UK grads, and we also have accenture.com/grad blog. So that's where our analysts and interns are blogging about their day-to-day roles in their lives, which is also really great. So you can check that out. And thanks again. Have a lovely evening, everybody.